Welcome to the professor, and thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. Today, I'm doing this video in English because I know a lot of you sometime want me to do this in English, especially if you are non-Creole speaking, so you understand what's going on in the matter of E-mini-FX. There's been so much information, I should say, misinformations or rumors, people talking about when and how they're going to get, if and when and how they're going to get the money. And I've heard people from E-mini-FX telling people that they don't have to do anything, that the receiver will send them a check. I am going to tell you what's going to happen, how, and what you can do to get your money back. So we're going to get into that discussions right after this break. Welcome back to the professor. Again, thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. So, all right, let's get into it. You guys know I've been reporting on the E-mini-FX matter for a very long time now. So obviously, Eddie Alexson pled guilty. You guys know that. Let's talk about how much money the receiver has in possession and how and when you should expect to get that money back. The receiver filed a report called the third annual report of the receiver that was filed with the court on February 13. I believe February 15, 3 days after Eddie Alexson pled guilty. And there was conversation with the receiver's office with regard to the process, what I call the process of remission, the process of getting money back to investors. Right now, the receiver has $61 million in cash and $61 million in crypto, which he's going to liquidate to turn into cash because, of course, the volatility of crypto would almost necessitate that he liquidate that. So let's say that there is about $124 million. Now, let me say that you've heard that Eddie Alexson forfeited $248 million to the government. The government at this point does not have the entire $148 million. The government, however, has half of that, which is $124 million. That $124 million, like I've explained before, some of it came from money from the several accounts, bank accounts that were under Mr. Alexson's name, and some of it under E-mini-FX. Also, some of that money came from the property, like cars and other things, like deposit on property that Mr. Alexson was going to buy. So all of these monies come from that to make that cash $61 million. And of course, the 63 million was from crypto. So what the receiver said, it's very simple. No one is going to receive a check. There's no such thing as sitting at home and hoping that the receiver will send you a check. That's not going to happen, okay? So you understand that. However, what is going to happen, the receiver is going to set up a process. Now, the receiver has not decided on the process yet, but his office is working on setting up a process. The process would require a number of things. One, it would require an investor to fill out a form to then provide certain biometric information, name, address, so on and so forth, how much money invested. And then you as the investor will have to show proof that you actually gave your money to AD Alexandre or to eMiniFX. Now, I have had some questions from people who were saying, well, if the government has the list of investors and they know who invested, why should I be forced to provide the government with proof of investment? There are two ways to answer the question. First, the government doesn't know whether or not they should trust the list that they got from eMiniFX. Because to be honest with you guys, eMiniFX was really, it was just crazy. Taxes wasn't paid. There was no record keeping. Oh, yes, there was a list of investors, but you couldn't really rely on that list to say that just because there was a list, that means that these people invested. Because remember, eMiniFX was a fraudulent company. eMiniFX was a company based on fraud. So it's going to be very hard to rely on a company whose business was fraud. So people is going to have to make this claim. Now, I know that there are people who gave their money directly to AD Alexandre by making bank deposits or by doing wire transfers. If you're one of these people, then you should have no problem establishing the evidence to show that you did at one point give money to Mr. Alexandre, and that money was intended to invest on your behalf. So that's the first thing, and you're gonna have to do that. Now, there are, like I've said before, there are 4 different kind of investors in eMiniFX. There are those who give money directly to eMiniFX or to AD Alexandre, and they can trace that back. And there are people who actually use cryptocurrency to then transfer crypto, okay, digital currency from their wallet to a crypto wallet belonging to either AD Alexandre or eMiniFX. So with crypto transfers, it gets a little more complicated because normally people don't have their names on their account. They have a key to be able to access the account and do the transfers. So these people is going to have to also submit some kind of evidence showing that they did transfer that money to eMiniFX or Alexandre, and that's how they're going to be able to verify the investment. The third type of people are people who actually take their money, give that money to a third party with the hope or the promise that the third party would have eventually invested that money with eMiniFX. So no one knows for sure if that really happened. For example, I have a number of people who called me who said, look, I've gave $100,000 to my pastor, or I gave $50,000 to my pastor. My pastor told me that he was going to invest it in eMiniFX. So certainly that person does not, his name or her name would not figure on any list, absolutely on any list. If the pastor or that person did invest the money under his name, so you have to have that person's name. So when you fill out the application, you said, hey, I didn't give my money directly to eMiniFX, but I gave it to a pastor, I give it to somebody else, and that person's name is X, Y, and Z, and the person said he was going to invest it. This is proof where that money came from. For example, if you went to your bank and withdraw $100,000, either it was bank checks or it was cash, if you can show a receipt where that money came from and the date that the money was withdrawn, and then you can then say that money was given to Joe, for example. And Joe is a pastor in that church, or Joe is a deacon in that church, or Joe is a friend of mine, or Joe is my uncle, or Joe is my friend, or whatever. Joe promised me he was going to invest that money to eMiniFX. What the receiver is going to do is take that information and try to see if the name you gave match the list, like if Joe is actually invest. So I think that a lot of people are going to find out perhaps the money they gave to whoever it is, that not all of it was invested in eMiniFX. So that is going to be the process. Now, the next questions I've heard is, well, people ask me, Professor, how long is this process going to take? Now, based on what the receiver said he's trying very hard to get money to people as soon as he can certify the claim. So that's going to take some time, guys. And I can tell you, based on my experience dealing with that type of cases, it takes a few years before they get to you. If you will recall the Bernie Madoff case, it took 7 years for investors to get their money back. Of course, this was a bigger case. There were billions of dollars at stake. It was nothing like E-mini-FX. E-mini-FX is a smaller case when we talk about Bernie Madoff. But I think E-mini-FX is more complicated than the Bernie Madoff investors, because we have people who give money to people. We have people who send in money using digital currency in terms of crypto Bitcoins. So it's not going to be that easy to be able to find out who these people are and so on and so forth. Now, once the claim timing, in other words, if you have 6 months, 3 months, 2 months, whatever time you have, 60 days to make a claim, you make that claim. Then the receiver has now to analyze your claim, making sure that you are the person you are, and so on and so forth, and decide. Once they decide that, then they have to decide what would be the pro rata share of everyone. Remember, I said the receiver has right now $124 million in hands. There may be more money coming, but as of now, there's no money. That's all there is. But from what I gathered, there were 62,000 investors, and they were close to $300 million. Now we're talking about 250. So if that's the case, we are missing $126 million, which is half of all the money invested so far, based on what we have. So meaning that the receiver cannot start doling money out, giving money to people without collecting all the possible money there is to be collected, and also without getting as many people to file claim to actually establish their claim as possible. Because if you've got, let's say, 10,000 people who establish claim, and those 10,000 people invested $10 million, they're not going to get $10 million. They're probably not going to get anything until the entire class of claim is established. So it's going to take some time. My guess, and this is a guess, I don't want anybody to say this is what the professor said. I'm giving you my guess based on the experience. It would probably take about 3 years to get to that point, to get to the point where everything is done. Now, keep in mind also that none of you, okay, I could say that to you with certainty, none of you are going to get the money you invested. If you invested 100,000, you would be lucky if you get 50% of that, which would be $50,000. Because normally you don't get that, because remember that the receiver has a staff of people working for him, and these people have to be paid. And the payment for these people comes from the money that he has. As of now, from the time the case started back in May of 2022 until right now, the receiver already spent $1.9 million of that money to investigate, to hire people to do certain things. So obviously the receiver is going to continue doing the work, and then the receiver may have to hire people, other people to help, and so on, and all of these people have to be paid. So that money is coming from that, in addition to they may not be able to get the rest of that money because they may get some of it, because here's what happened. When Eddie Alexson took a plea, he agreed to forfeit up to 248 million in change to the government. The government already had 124 million, which I just explained to you. So they're missing about another 124 million. Alexson's lawyer asked the judge to give him enough time up until July 12, when he will be sentenced, so that he'll have enough time between now and July 12 to help the government get that money. So I am, on top of this. I'm obviously in contact with the government. wanting to make sure when they have that information, when they have that money, I know how much comes in, so then I can inform you. But I think also that there are a lot of people, perhaps some of them may not even speak English. Some of them may not be the typical investors who understand investment, because I've spoken to a lot of people who have no idea what was going on, except that somebody promised them they were going to make money if they invest their money. So they went ahead and invest money. And now they don't know whether they're going to lose all that money. So for these people, there's probably going to be and organizations that speak their language, speak Creole, will be able to kind of walk them through the process so that they don't lose all their money. And most of these people are small investors, 5,000, 10,000, 3,000, 2,500. The small investor who invests small money. Now, for a lot of you, this may not be a lot of money, but for these people, that 5,000, could as well be $1 million. So because there are so many people who invested that small amount, so if none of these people are able to establish a claim, then that money doesn't necessarily go to the rest of the investors. No, the government gets to keep whatever they don't give back to the investors class. So this is exactly what's going on. If you've heard anything else from MNEFX, if anybody told you anything, it is not what I just told you. It is a lie, okay? So don't believe it. Because in this channel, I've always told you the truth. And when I tell you something's going to happen, you see it happen. I told you from the beginning, there's no way that Eddie Alexander will be able to win this case. He's eventually going to take a plea. He's going to prison. And maybe you get 50% of your money. Everything I've told you became source for reality. And I'm going to continue telling you the truth. So now, like I said earlier, you will lose some of your money, at least some of what you invested. But there are ways to make you whole, and that is there are people responsible for what happened. This massive fraud from MNEFX was not orchestrated by just one person. It's impossible for one person to have done this. There are probably hundreds of people who somewhere along the line knew the nature of MNEFX business. They knew what was going on. They knew it was fraudulent. And they continue to engage, continue to raise money because they had an interest, either because Eddie Alexander was paying them giving them a percentage on the invested money they brought in, or that they were getting paid to do something that they knew was obviously illegal. For example, Eddie Alexander has a system in his computer that he built into his computer. When somebody opens an account with MNEFX, you put your money in, and the next day, sometime the next hour, your money somewhat increased in value. There was no trading that increased your money in value. The computer was programmed to put that number there. So whoever programmed that computer, they knew. The accountants, the vice president, the customer service people, all the people who were working in the inner circle with Eddie Alexander, they had to know. They knew. And if they knew and they did nothing about it, they are co-conspirators, whether or not they were arrested or not, because the justice system provides for criminal prosecution and civil lawsuit, which basically can, totally impoverish these people. If they made money, they're going to have to turn that money back so that people who lost money can get their money back. So I've told you exactly where we are, where the case is, what the receiver is doing. So you shouldn't have no doubt at all what's going on. So please don't forget to subscribe, because once you subscribe, when I get a new video, you get to see it. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. If you know anybody else who have invested in the MNEFX, please let them know of this channel and share the video with them and ask them to subscribe. You'll see my telephone number here on the screen. If you have any questions, drop me a call or send me an email. My email is also there, and I respond to all my call, to all my email. Until next time, I thank you for watching The Professor. As soon as I get news about A-Mini-FX, any new news, anything new, I shall bring it and share it with you. Again, thank you for watching.